This is an interview with MarciaPlinga for the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor Oral History Project titled Women at Work. The interview is being conducted at the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor, as known as the Steel Museum, on Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. My name is Susan Lowry. Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right. Thank you for being here. All right, so a couple of introduction questions. Where did you and your family live when you were growing up?
I grew up around Mesopotamia Park.
Mesopotamia Park, is that different from like?
Trumbull County, the edge of Trumbull
Oh,
and
okay.
County, next to Middlefield almost.
I never heard the word park afterwards, so you kind of.
I actually lived on the park.
Okay, thank you.
On the commons.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My mother stayed at home. My father worked at Johnson Rubber, and then he worked at a printing place in Solon. But then my father passed in 1984, and my mom worked all kind of jobs, flea markets, grocery stores. We all got jobs.
Oh,
my
wow.
My brothers and I.
How many were there of you?
Four of us.
Four altogether siblings. So.
I have two brothers that are twins. They're 2 years older, and then a sister that's 2 years younger.
Okay. All right. And then where did you go to high school then?
I went to Bristol for 2 years, and then we moved to Niles, and I graduated from Niles.
Okay.
McKinley.
And what year was that?
1991.
And what did you do after high school? Did you go to college?
I started at Slippery Rock, and then I switched to YSU, but actually that didn't last even half a year. And then I waited for an independent override to go to art school in Pittsburgh, but I had to wait till I was 21 to get my own financing, so I waited till then. So I traveled the next couple years doing odd jobs, building houses, learning to roof. I built a cabin in the woods in Arkansas when I was 19.
Oh my gosh, that sounds really fun.
Cleared woods and built roads in Florida for about a year, and then moved to Arkansas and
What made you get into that type of job as, say, something like retail or fast food?
I just really wanted to see a little more of the world, and where we grew up was a little bit of a small world, and I'm kind of a people studier, and I wanted to learn how to do things, how to build, how to, and I've always been kind of handy. I grew up with a lot of uncles, and my dad was always helping everyone. Like, we had an older population around the park, and all the houses were 200 years old, so when something went wrong, we went over and helped them.
Right.
And I mowed their lawns and did their gardens, and they would let us pick raspberries or make us lunch. And we always carried their groceries from the little store. We were.
Wow.
So, but most of the people around the park were like in their 70s and 80s when we were little. So my dad was like, you don't take money from Mrs. Clark. You carry her groceries. You don't let her walk around in the snow.
That's
so
awesome.
Pretty old school.
Yeah. All right.
My dad was a real hard worker. He had a 5-mile procession in our little world of population 2,000, our town. He just touched so many lives and helped people, and I grew up wanting to be the same way. Good. And wanting to be a hard worker and help people with their houses. And
I see. That makes sense. And you said he worked at Johnson Rubber, and then
Then Solon Printing.
Solon Printing. Who was it? Did anybody work at a steel mill, did you say?
My mother, after we moved to Niles, before I graduated, she started working at McDonald's Steel and met her third husband there, who also worked at the steel mill. They're still married today.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
She retired from McDonald's Steel about 5 or 6 years ago, but she was an office person, but she had her own trailer, and she would handle everybody and walk through the mill and all that, and I'd go see her there. But my stepfather was a pipe fitter there also.
Okay, very good. So your very first job, though, whether it was in high school or out of high school, what was it?
My very first job was mowing lawns, and that was in 2nd grade.
Oh.
And by the time I was in 4th grade, I had 20 lawns to mow, and I would paint fences. Or
oh my gosh!
Anything. I watered all the flowers at the cemetery and at the church for $2 a week.
I was expecting to hear what most teenagers would do in that work. Fast food.
Yeah.
So this is impressive.
I did end up in fast food when I was in high school.
Yeah, but your first job, then right out of high school is when you started traveling, or no, you did the schooling.
Yeah.
then after the
And
schooling.
I worked at McDonald's and Rally's. I was a manager at 2 Rally's while I was in high school till after I graduated.
Yeah.
You know, but I also was always doing odd jobs and fixing things for people or fixing cars and.
Oh my goodness.
You know.
And did you learn that stuff on your own, or did your dad teach you, your uncles?
I learned like initial stuff as a little kid, but as a girl, it was always like hand me that, where my brothers were more under the hood. So my education on that was a little scant, and I just pursued it. You know, like if I had a neighbor that worked on cars, I would work on them with him. You know, and learn that. My neighbor on the west side was very handy with vehicles, so we fixed trucks together. You know.
So that is interesting. So so you're with a neighbor, you're fixing a vehicle. Did he kind of like take you under your wing and just teach you?
Absolutely.
Didn't matter that you were a girl.
He worked at Youngstown Steel Door. No, he was actually, we were like best buddies for the whole 10 years that we were neighbors.
Wow.
So I learned a lot about vehicles and, you know, was able to help. Like, you know, those older ladies, I'd pass by their house and there's an 80-year-old woman pushing a mower. I'm stopping and mowing the lawn. But if they need something fixed, I will. And when I'm off of work in between jobs, I'll put in a furnace or help a single mother out. Like, you know, our trade people do a lot of that too, but I go out on my own. If I'm working a lot of overtime, I'll put that out there, you know.
So you're a pipe fitter now, correct? With Union 396? And how did you come across that job?
My friend Ellen Vaughn was in the same trade, and my friend Michelle Fabic, they had both gotten to the apprenticeship maybe 6 or 7 years earlier and kind of suggested it to me because I was into more heavy-duty work and more tooling. It was one of the only things I really hadn't done was any plumbing or pipe fitting, honestly. But I was like, I want to know about that. And I was doing my own home repair, but I got sick one time and it cost me like 30 grand. I didn't have insurance. And she was like, you know, you can get a pension, you can get into something organized where you're making a good rate and you have medical coverage. So that was definitely a bonus.
Right.
But going through 5 years of school, I was like, you know, but it was worth it. It was hard, but it was.
Okay, and when you say 5 years of school, you're talking about the apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a couple of friends who got you, who introduced you and
suggested it to me, yeah.
And your training was the apprenticeship. And then during that apprenticeship, what exactly did you do?
I worked for Conti for my first 3 years, Conti Corp from out of Lowville. And that was a great experience because they had so many different kind of jobs. They had water treatment plants, schools, YMHA housing, where we were doing heavy duty pipe, some small industrial sites. So like they had a lot of work. So that whole 3 years I was on a variety of jobs, which all applied kind of to what I was learning in school as I went, doing schools and auditoriums. We did the Covelli Center, you know, like just everywhere.
And how many hours a day per week?
When I was an apprentice, it was mostly 40 hours a week.
Okay.
But once I got out of my time, my last year of my apprenticeship, I was on 610s and then 712s.
610, so that means, explain 610s.
6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and then 712, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
That's interesting. I don't think I could do that.
I'm a horse. Well, maybe not as much anymore. I'm a little slower, but I don't slow down that much. Guys are like, geez.
Okay, and then your job description. So as an apprentice, you went to different places. Were you doing welding?
I was doing a little bit of welding on like black malleable, like just the 21 cert, but I wasn't doing like specialty welding at that point because I'm really have a propensity for fitting.
Okay.
So it seemed like every job I went to, I ended up fitting more than welding because I could put stuff together and get guys welded and just keep doing the measuring and cutting and prepping and all that, and like, you know, doing the hangers, everything. So I like to stay real busy, so.
Okay.
But I have welded off and on through the years, but I stopped welding because I wanted to not lose my sight.
Okay.
Because I like to draw a lot, and sometimes situations are pretty bad where, you know, you're compromising your health, or, you know, and I kind of went away from the welding a little bit, but you know, I'm a pretty good asset as a fitter, I believe.
Yeah. Now, did you move up into more skilled positions after your apprenticeship?
When I was a fifth year, right as I was topping out, I got a job as a foreman, and I had a 60,000 hour job. all fiberglass, which I had no education on. I had to teach myself through all the books they had. I hired a bunch of guys. We ended up finishing under the amount of hours. I figured out the system, how to run it, got to redraw the job, became real familiar with blueprints, and because a lot was wrong with the drawings. So actually I went physically measuring every inch of the building, the ceilings, the everything in every system, and a lot of the parts were custom made, so I had to be really ahead of the game. And then I had the engineers sign every ISO I made to keep moving forward.
Whoa. Okay, so foreman, and did you always stay a foreman, or did you go back and forth?
I've been back and forth. I was a general foreman last year. I had 117 guys under me. I had 6 foremen and then work crew under that.
Wow. Okay. And
but you don't. You go to a job, it's different every time. You might be a foreman.
That's what I
mean, guys, that's why people shouldn't burn bridges. You might be working for that guy tomorrow.
That's right. Yep. And then we'd like to talk about the job and its conditions then. Okay. So like, describe for you a typical day, and either you could start as an apprenticeship or maybe even as a foreman.
During the apprenticeship, there was a lot less safety protocol in place. You know, like I was dry coring through concrete walls at the tippy top of a ladder leaning on a wall, you know, that kind of thing with nothing to tie off to.
Whoa.
And when you're an apprentice, you do what you're told. So there was a lot of compromises in the beginning. And my 4th year, I actually broke my arm and my neck, being in bad situations and having a shitty, crappy partner. I worked for York Mahoning for a year, and the guy I worked with would leave me on jobs by myself. I was at U.S. Steel pulling down on I had 2 36-inch wrenches in my arms, and I went to pull down on this block valve to tighten it, and I broke my neck. And he was nowhere to be found. I had to drive myself home holding my hair, you know, and shifting my gear. It was awful. And I just thought I strained myself, so I kept working. And then it turned out I had broken my neck.
Oh my!
And with the same guy, I was drilling on a ladder, turned sideways, and all this water is running down, and the bit caught, and it turned my body, and my 1 foot kicked the other. The ladder flew out from under me, and the drill turned around and started going here. But actually, a couple weeks earlier, I had torn my breast drilling out rivets in this little confined space.
Yeah.
It caught my shirt and wound in. So luckily, as I fell, I was pushing the drill away from me, and it rolled back on the push handle and just barely scraped me. But had I not pushed it away, it would have went right through.
Oh my goodness!
You know? So I had 17 breaks in my arm.
Why did he leave you? Was it because he
was a despicable person. Not everybody's like that. It just I was always alone with him, and I would do all the work, and he would take all the credit basically. Right. And when there was a bad position, he would just stick me with it.
I see.
So
now, of course,
and I didn't know a lot better when I could say no, but after having 2 accidents in 1 year, it was pretty apparent that I needed to watch out for the people around me and for myself. You know? And
so this being, you know, a conversation about women in work, do you feel that he was singling you out like that because you were a woman, or because you were young, or because you were?
He didn't like me.
He just didn't like you in general.
I was good at what I was doing, and we would go any job we went on. He would have us alienated by the first coffee break. He was a jerk.
Wow.
And
okay, so it was just him.
Yeah, he was.
I see.
But I had a guy for Conti for 3 years, this older guy, and every time I partnered up with him, he would be like, "You don't belong out here. You should be home having babies." He's an old crotchety bastard. Like, he was mean. He'd been in the trade, but no one in his family talked to him anymore. His son was in the trade and wouldn't speak to him. I mean, but he would sit there and scream at me. And one day, I'm fitting on the other end of this pipe, and he's screaming at me. And the people in the job would be like, "How can you handle that?" And I'm like, "He's just F-bombing me and calling me every name and calling me out of my name." Wow. And I'm like, when you're an apprentice, you just have to keep your mouth shut. It's part of like a rites of passage, you know what I mean? But it's not supposed to go to that level. Yeah. So he's like screaming at me one day, and his comb over was flying in the air, and I just burst into laughter because I was like almost in tears. And I'm like, I had a guy being like, we were in this thing, and he's like, "I know some bitch that's gonna cry by the end of the day," and I'm like, "Not me." And he was so angry that he couldn't get my goat that he was in anger tears, and he's like, went outside. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Good payback.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up with a lot of uncles and doing a lot of harder work, so I mean, I was. I was able to probably am more comfortable around a group of men than a lot of other women.
Your family kind of nurtured you to be
My
more thick-skinned?
My dad's mom lived next door to us when we were growing up, and she had 5 other sons besides my dad, and my mom had 6 or 7 brothers, so, and all of us lived with us for a year during their graduating years, so it was a lot of, and all the work that I did always just ended up being more on, where I was around more males. You know?
I understand. So yeah, I would like to think then it was that thick skin that you had that helped you
and
to
I'll tell you
sustain.
what I had right before the trade. I had like issues standing up to guys and stuff and thinking that I deserved to be treated a certain way, or like I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. So when I got in the trade, I was like, because when I get angry and don't do something about it, that's when I actually tear up. It's not me bawling, it's me being like, dude, I have to hurt you. You know, like, and I'll be patient a real long time. I mean, I could be punched in the face, and if you stop, I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a very like peaceful person, and it was definitely a challenge, but I was like, I am not going to break down in tears on a job. I'm not, you know, and I've had a lot of, I've been physically pushed around. I've knocked a guy out on a job a couple of times where they were in my space for so long that I had to do something about it. And I don't advocate violence at all. I've been mugged. When I lived in Youngstown, I would have been mugged and had 17 skull fractures, but I still didn't hurt those people.
Right.
You know, and I don't believe in it. So, but I've had a lot of people put me to my edge. There's some bullies out there.
No, I could believe that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so then, we talked about your hours and your shift but it was usually like, well, wait a minute, no, if you're working like either 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, that's like what, maybe 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. then? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Oh yeah, easily. And then, 7 to 7:30 because they don't pay your first lunch.
Okay.
Things like that, like in an 8-hour shift.
Did you like that? Did you like working those kind of hours and days?
I did for a time, but I don't prefer it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go for a little while, but you know, at one point you just kind of turn into a zombie. Like, especially when I was going out of town doing it. I'm living in a hotel. I'm driving. We're getting bussed in. There's thousands of people on the site. It's just mayhem. You know what I mean? But I always find my niche.
Okay, good.
And I can go for a long time. I get going and I kind of keep going. You know, if I'm can stay focused.
Yeah. How did you handle that change though?
Well, when I first went from the regular 40 hours to overtime, I was excited to make the money because each year you get a raise until you top out, and you get journeyman rate. So, you know, at that time, you know, I had left a long relationship. It would have been nice to have that money when I was helping raise kids and all that, but it just didn't work out that way. But I was able to help out a lot of my friends.
Wow.
You know, and actually, you know, just have balance and not feel like financially stressed for the first time. I always had 2 or 3 jobs all my life before that. So for me, in the beginning, it was exciting.
That makes sense.
But
that helps
leaves
motivate you.
No time for your life.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong in your life, things unravel quickly when you're working those hours. You know, especially if it's a shutdown and you're not supposed to miss any time, or if you're a foreman.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be there, and
yeah.
So it's, you know, it varies per job.
Well, one of my later questions that I'm going to go ahead and bring up now, were you ever married? Do you have any children? I
was never married. I had a girl that I was with for 10 years, and we had twins. She was handicapped, and so were the twins. They both had cerebral palsy. And
okay.
During my apprenticeship, I was raising them, actually.
I see.
And they were very involved in the union and with my family, and, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a good provider, and I took good care of them, and, you know.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
The mom became a little bit of an alcoholic and a little bit of a, you know, and I don't hit girls.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had to get out of there. But the girls were 18 by that point. They still had a lot of needs, but I got them to be independent. I got them mainstreamed in school, and
good.
They were going to a handicap school, but they were being coddled, and I wanted them challenged, and I wanted them to know what they were capable of. So every night after school, between work and school, I would sit at the table for 2 or 3 hours, and we would go over one subject at a time. They'd be in tears, you know, but I said, even if it's one subject that we can get you mainstreamed, we're going to do that. I'll sit here. So they committed themselves to that effort, and so did I. So, like, I work them, school.
In the long run, that was rewarding for you.
Absolutely.
And you wouldn't change a thing with that, would you?
No, and it was exciting for them. Like, well, if they ever wanted Dairy Queen, they'd pack my lunch. It was really sweet. Otherwise I'd pack my own. But
that's great.
But they liked
it.
hearing about the jobs and seeing pictures and things too.
Yeah.
And it was exciting for them. And they'd get me little gifts for work. All the kids were buying me knives. And sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah,
that's
cute. I like
it was
that.
Exciting.
Because so they weren't even your biological children, but like you said, you were with your girlfriend and having that relationship and still having taken on that responsibility.
Yeah,
that says a lot about your character and your personality.
I was in my mid-20s, but I just I really believed in doing the right thing and doing the right thing no matter what, and that children are first, and that no matter what's their mother lost sight of that when she started having issues, and her mom went into a coma and she just turned into another person, and it got real bad. So I had to, but I told them, I'm like, you're old enough to understand, you don't stay for this. She'd wake me up in the night drunk, punching me in the face. And the kids came down and saw it one time and they're crying, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I said, sometimes it's an act of love to walk away. But I fully was ingratiated in that and wanted to make us a good home, and I would shop and I would build and I would fix, and I'm very dedicated to that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, so you kind of touched on a little bit with your relationship with a couple of different coworkers. Any other coworkers that stick out, even if it's a positive experience? One
of the guys that was like my foreman a lot when I was an apprentice was kind of a father figure to me, I guess, Bob Slipkovich, and he just was real smart and real patient. And he kind of took me under his wing. So where I had other guys that would literally hunch over their work and hide it from me and not teach me and be like, you don't belong here. Or if I did a good job, some guys that were lazy would be like, you're making us look bad, and you're a company suck a dick, all this kind of stuff, and real hostile, and throwing pipe off a lift at me. I'm like, they dumped my drawing desk and tore up all my drawings because I wouldn't not stop doing my job,
Wow.
But there's been a lot of things, and I've been hit, I've been punched, I've punched back once or twice.
Yeah.
Well,
self-defense.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been cornered a few times. There's been some pretty dirt balls out there, but there's a lot of great guys that I would not forgo what they taught me, or that they took the time and the patience to do that.
When you got in those situations where you're being attacked, whether verbally, abusively, mentally, what made you not walk away and try something new? Was it just the fact that you loved it so much, that physical work?
Just because I think in anything that you do, in any group, you're going to find a dynamic of personalities, including aggressive people or competitive people, or people that compare themselves to you while they're doing nothing. Like, I've had guys be like, you're killing the job. We're here to do a job. They hired this job union because we do it right the first time, because we actually do everything we're supposed to do, and they don't have to worry about an explosion, or they don't. So I'm very serious about my job and about my production, but I don't forgo safety for that. And I've been put in a lot of bad positions, but I've also pressured myself into that, trying to make a way for myself as a female even. Early on, it was like there was nothing I wouldn't do. And I got put in some bad situations, but I didn't realize the kind of person I was dealing with.
Yeah.
I was so focused on learning something every day and being able to do this and this and this, and there wasn't nothing I wasn't willing to do. If there's a hole, I'll go in it,
Right.
But I'm also, that's kind of my work ethic anyway, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I can be pretty...
So you were able to work with Bob quite a few times as an apprentice, and then as a foreman. Were you able to pick some of your employees from
they have,
the work
if you're
list?
a foreman, you hire two and you pick one.
Okay.
But when I was an apprentice as a foreman, they kind of picked my crew, and it was a matter of coming off the list at that point. Most of our local was working on that site, so it was kind of, we were doing the paint shop at GM. We had just done the tear out at the assembly plant, and right when they started building that, we started doing that.
Okay.
But I was working the construction of it for quite a while till they got a shell around it, and then I started being a foreman. But we were doing all the big steel pipe and all the rack piping. And
wow. Oh my goodness. What did you enjoy most about your job?
The camaraderie, the brotherhood, sisterhood, brotherhood, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I've heard that before.
When I was at Conti, my grandma was ready to pass, and we brought her home from the hospital. And I was an apprentice, and you're not supposed to miss. And Ralph Conti, he called me up personally and was like, families first, you know, and he actually sent trays of food there while we were waiting for her to pass. And
Oh my goodness.
and all these other guys were like, yeah, your Aunt Bonnie ain't going to pay your rent when you get thrown out of the apprenticeship. And I'm like, I'm doing the right thing by my peace of mind. I had one regret ever in my life where I lost someone and I didn't go see them earlier on, and I don't believe in that. And I know how much it meant for my grandma for me to be there. And
Right.
and obviously it meant a lot to him too, so he let me work 2 or 3 days a week, whatever I could do. And even when my girlfriend's mom went in a coma that same year, you know, I had a lot to deal with the kids and all that, and we were in the hospital all the time. She was on life support, and he was fully supportive of that.
That
a lot
is
of guys
awesome.
weren't. And I was like, you know, it's not your business, but I'll tell you what's actually going on.
Yeah.
You know, and even in my schooling, my instructors, you know, I was very open about, hey, I'm going to deal with this a certain way, and if it means my career, then it means my career.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Yeah.
I will find something else to do, but I really love what I do.
Yeah. How about the least thing you enjoy about your job?
I would say the compromises and safety, like the when there's a hurry or an emergency, you have certain people that will jump in without doing the protocol or locking out, which I've had a lot of industrial accidents for that reason, or where someone didn't do their job and taking a minute. You always want to take, I mean, and when you're going 100, 200, 300 feet in the air and you're working on something bigger than you know what I mean, and you're relying on a crane and you're relying on a lift and you're climbing out of a basket onto a 4-inch I-beam, you have to be spot on. So there's a lot of planning and there's a lot of, factors.
Have you seen some pretty serious major accidents because of?
I've seen 6 people die since I've been in the trade.
Wow. How many years has this been then?
This is my 24th year.
Wow.
And, you know, I've had a lot of close calls as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, the breaking of the neck and
Well, my last accident, I got gassed at the Coke battery, and it was, and still I'm seeing 6 different doctors right now.
wow.
Because I had some neurological.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
But
Wow.
I'm recovering.
Yeah.
And actually, in that moment, that plan, I really liked working there, and I liked the brotherhood of it. But leading up to that accident, I was leaving there in tears every day because I was just glad nobody died that day. And even my boss was like, "I feel like I'm sending you to your death," and I'm like, "You are." So the day that happened, I went to the other scaffold, and all the younger guys lined up their wrenches so they're out of the line of fire, which means when that flange is open, if something comes out and they're leaning down for a wrench, it doesn't blindside them. You know.
Wow.
But I was in like the throat of the valve in the line, and when they turned the purge down, the coke gas backed up and blasted out. I had to put the pan down, but it knocked me unconscious. And
Wow. Yeah.
But I at least knew when to stop, and that's kind of why I was in the position I was in. It was being an older guy, you know. But it was more than I bargained for.
What's your take on the atmosphere for women at where you work?
I would say there's a pretty mixed bag of that, because there have been some women that come in and they milk the fact that they're female. So they walk around in tight pants and a ton of makeup, and it's really kind of, it takes a lot away from what someone like myself has gone through or fought for, you know. And,
Yeah,
and there's
you're right.
women that do come in the trade just to pull a check. But you have that in every culture of work.
Yeah.
People that don't have work ethic and think they're entitled to something, you know. But I've plumbed up a few girls verbally on that note. Like, you're not gonna walk around this job with me here like that, because I ain't having it, you know. And then I've gone to jobs out of town, like when I was in West Virginia. These guys were like, women have 2 purposes on a job, either under the desk sucking their dick or blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh really? I'm like, well,
right.
get rid of me. You're fucking losing out. You know what I mean? Because I get it done.
That's right. Oh my goodness.
Every job I go on, usually, even if I'm not a foreman, I take the lead, and they trust me to do things right and get them toolless, and you know, and I know my trade well, and if I don't know something, I will learn about it.
So now, okay, so this is spawning a new question here. So the women that were just there basically to get a check compared to you who was working hard to make a living, did the men treat you differently from them as well then?
Absolutely.
Make that...
I've seen girls come in and behave that way, and you can see an instant difference. When I was an apprentice, they treated me like they treated anyone else.
Okay.
But I was in with a good company where it was a decent bunch of guys too. They weren't all woman haters, except that old man. He was just a bastard.
Yeah.
You know, he was
yeah.
every day for 3 years. I didn't even want to go to work anymore because he was always screaming at me. You know what I mean? It was like...
Yeah, I wouldn't want to either. I can't believe you survived that. I really cannot. Wow.
I got pretty thick skin for but as sensitive as I am and empathic, I run pretty thick on that. Like, you know.
Oh, boy.
And some people just want to test your mettle, you know. They
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true too.
put you through the...
And I'd like to assume then that women were the minority. You know, there was more men than women. But also in the minority, I would say the blacks and Hispanics, were there any Asians or any other kind of specific ethnicity? And were they treated any differently?
The Koreans that we're presently working with, they're a big part of that lithium plant in Lordstown.
Oh, okay.
And they're not in the trade.
Okay.
But
they're in the neighborhood.
They're in our job, walking under our red tape. They're idiots. And they're bringing in these systems with this shit grade metal. I mean, drawings that don't even belong to the job. Like my whole job last year, I worked for 3 contractors, was sorting out their nonsense.
Oh my
Every day was a
gosh.
lie with lie drawings, with telling us to put the wrong valves in explosive areas. And I had to put my foot down. I had a folder this big of photos of, they would go behind my back to my guys and tell them to put something in after the foreman told them not to, knowing it was the wrong thing, but they believe if you've got downtime, you should be working whether you're doing it wrong or not. But they don't realize what it takes to undo. We were doing the clean rooms where the lithium is made. And in a lithium, moisture is an explosion. So everything about the way you put these systems together, the way you weld them, the way you purge them, the cleaning of them, the prep, the clean rooms, the air quality, everything is a factor. And they're just like, throw it in. They don't. I had 100 guys standing around every day waiting for these people to get their head out of their ass.
Oh my goodness.
But my company, we actually took them in and showed them, this is how this works. And we brought their heads in and tried to get together with them, but the lies continued, the screaming in your face every day, you know, I mean, just really unbelievable behavior. And I was like, you know, it doesn't have to be this way. But I document to cover, if you're a foreman, you got to cover. They're always like, CYA, you know, like you need to document things that are pertinent, you know. And it ended up saving our company in the long run because they were trying to say, we just did this on our own, because they're verbally saying, do this. I'm like, put it on a piece of paper. They disappear. Now, here's the real drawings. They didn't release the drawings until I was 6 months into the job, and they'd thrown another contractor out trying to blame them for production, but it was actually, it was the fault of the facilitators, you know. So, just really, I don't see a ton of minorities, but sometimes on jobs, I see them being treated pretty bad. You know, like when I worked on the Ohio River, there was a lot of racism. Like there was actually guys in the tool trailers with like no N-word written on tools and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm in this trailer and everybody's acting like they're fine. And this one guy, Ernesto Perez, and this other guy, these 2 brothers, they're actually brothers, but guys of color. As soon as they walk out of the trailer, everybody's N-word, this, race jokes. And I'm like,
wow.
I stand up. I'm like, don't ever speak that way around me. Don't you ever, you know, you're sitting here acting like he's your brother and then you're turning around on it. Yeah. You know, that mob mentality sometimes.
Yeah. So you saw a lot of that on the job too?
Most of the sexual harassment I experience is usually from men of color more so than anyone else, like when I'm traveling.
Really?
And stuff. Like, yeah, I spent a lot of years on the road and living in hotels and like working a lot of night turn and like there was just groups of guys on some jobs, like they'd be walking by, like coming up behind me while I'm running a grinder, you know, licking their lips at, just really uncomfortable stuff. I've had a lot of guys, you know, I knocked one guy's teeth out. He was putting his hands on me and grabbing me between the legs going up the stairs and just being creepy. And I'm a very open, friendly, kind person. I've actually like been through a lot in my life, so I've been able to help a lot of people with their issues. And sometimes when you're on 12s, you're up 100 feet in the air waiting for a permit, and you're sitting there for 4 hours with a group of guys. You're going to talk, and have conversations, and usually I go towards, like if they're having problems with their wife, like, I'm like, hey, you got to turn around and be a little kinder, a little, and a lot of guys, their wives don't want them working with me because I'm a female. But that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm
actually, maybe they should be worried. The guys.
Well, I actually helped a couple guys out, and they were like, things were going better, and I go over for dinner, and the wife's having a drink, and she's, and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna see you at the job, brother. I'm like, not gonna get involved in
that. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
No, I keep it clean.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Okay, so
actually, a lot of guys know that. Like, I had a guy come up into the break area and standing over me, F-bombing me, he called me bitch, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And these guys, I knocked one guy out years and years ago. And so, when they see somebody berating me and screaming at me, they're all they all jump back. But I'm not a reactor. I'm literally calm, center. I get real easy. And
yeah.
So this guy's going on, and usually I could get their goat without it having to turn. That's the last.
Yeah.
But I've been in a lot of bad confrontations and some scary moments. Where some guys have me cornered or something.
Oh my gosh.
Do what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say since my apprenticeship till now, the more and more time goes by, the more easier the environment is. That battery plant is the most women I've seen on a job, and it was actually really wonderful just to see that many females and more of an even representation. And I could see that growth. Probably the first 10 years for me in the trade, it was rare that there was one other woman on a job, even with 3,000 people.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's good then.
So.
And then one of the other topics is about pay. But if I understand it correctly, when you're part of a union and this pipe fitter, a lot of that stuff it's equal pay across the board.
Yes, it is.
Correct?
Okay. And even the foreman stuff is more of an experience thing than it is about pay, because $1 or $2 more an hour to put up with all that crap and deal with all those personalities and the drawings and the engineers and the head of the plant owners, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm not a fan of being a foreman, especially if it involves a laptop, because I'm not a data entry person. I'm in the field, hands-on person, and I can run a job very well, but I prefer to have my hands on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I've done both, where I just am not taking foreman's pay, but my foreman give me the drawings and tell me what you need, and give me a crew of guys,
Yeah.
But I don't mind taking the lead, and I don't mind being led. I mean, there's something to learn every time we go on a job. The systems are always changing.
Exactly.
The processes for welding, the safety protocols, the newer tooling. So it's evolving,
Yeah.
But the pay is the same. The only difference is per local. Everybody has a different rate, or sometimes you'll work for a 90% rate because they're desperate to have union work, so.
Okay.
It can be a compromise, but everybody's getting paid the same.
All right. And then how much longer do you plan on working as a pipe fitter in this job? When do you plan on retiring, do you think?
Well, I'm hoping to get a good solid 15 years more.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hopefully, yeah.
I mean, I've had to pull back and slow down a little bit, and I just especially if you work a lot of time, you want your day to go by, but I'm very just, everywhere I go, say I go out of town, the hall will call me and be like, what did you do to them? And they want you back and they won't let me go. I'm I got to go home. There's no more travelers here. But I just try to care about everybody and communicate. And also, you got to learn to bite your tongue. And I don't walk around feeling when I go to work, I don't walk in and go, I'm a girl. I'm a fucking pipe fitter. I mean, and really, and when a guy will be like, oh, who's your dad? My dad wasn't in the trade. I got the top score on the test, and I got the top out score because I worked my ass off for it. That's how I got in the trade.
Right.
And actually, the girl that gave me a referral had just failed a drug test for a really heavy.
Oh no.
And I was like, I don't know her that well. I'm in an interview with 8 guys standing at the table. I got 8 people interviewing me, and I'm like, but I was feeling good that day. My bio, And I'm like, yeah, I don't see her very often. But they were like, well, you got, and the only question I missed is when I was younger, my dad or somebody, whoever I would be doing work with, they never tell me what tool was named. Just hand me that.
Oh, okay.
So the question was,
oh no,
here's the task. Do you use a crescent wrench or a pipe wrench?
Oh,
I gave the right, and they were all looking at me, and I could see that because I knew when I left, but all the math I got right, and the other formula and volume questions, it was like 300 questions, and mostly like geometry and stuff. And I'm like, I went to the library and studied for like 4 weeks doing sample tests before I took the test, and it was 3 years.
wow.
Because they did a merger, so I had to wait 3 years to get in from when I tried to get in first.
Oh, I see.
They didn't take a class until the merger, but yeah, it was. So they're like got that smirk on their face, and I'm like, pipe wrench, you know. Like I was like, oh, caught me there, you know.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I can know a lot of things on the job, and there's so many tools and so many things. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I have to draw it because I don't know what the hell it's called. You know, like or you might go with a certain kind of work, and 10 years later you're back to doing more specifically to that. So it changes so much. You know, like I was doing a ton of stainless, where before that I was doing 60-inch steel lines and working at a coke battery and working at blast furnace. And
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
my
so-
goodness. And then, so you are an artist as well as your hobby. That kind of interests me a little bit too. What got you into the art?
Since I remember being 2 years old and drawing on the walls, and my
Drawing on
dad
the
worked
walls.
at a paper place. We were very, very, very poor, and our house was like a 200-year-old gray shack. And my dad worked all the time. You know, he was always working, and he would bring home like rolls of paper or paper that had like glitches on it, so the whole other side would be clear. And we you know, I just like always liked drawing, and everywhere I've been in my life, I like drawing, and like if people tend to open up to me a lot, share stories of losses. So I'll do like collages, and I'll either paint or sculpt or whatever, and then it'll share their whole story. And then I'll do like ones that are more alternative, where everything turns into something else.
Yeah.
You can follow a story in it. And
Yeah. All right.
but like when I got in the trade, going in all these wild places, it was very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Like art-wise, you know.
Yeah.
To see the systems and the shapes and the twists and turns, and even just like the steams and the chemicals, and you know, it's a lot of visual.
Is there anything else that you would like to add about your working life? Maybe something that I didn't ask, I didn't touch on.
I would just say, like, you know, when I got in, I was very intimidated because I knew there would be some opposition to female, but I also knew that I was a good worker and that I could learn. But it was intimidating for a long time, and I actually probably compromised myself and allowed a lot of behaviors towards me for a lot of years before I realized to stand up for that and be a little more confident and realize that it wasn't okay. But I would go years and go on a certain job, and someone would be hassling me, and I would just not even want to get up in the morning and go to work. And I started letting that affect my reputation. I wouldn't go to work, but I wouldn't say anything about it because the whole union will turn on you if you.
Wow.
I've never filed a report on paper ever in my trade because of that. Because like early on, if a woman filed a complaint about somebody, then everybody treated you like shit and no one would speak to you. But now that's changing.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
but in the beginning, I went through a lot of crap, and I was depressed a lot, and I cried a lot at home, and I didn't get up and go to work because I was tired of somebody touching me every day, or somebody berating me every day, or just getting bad vibes, or being put in bad spots, or being hurt. You know, or having guys follow me around and stalk me on jobs, and you know, I have a weirdo magnet anyway, but it doesn't go that well.
Yeah,
Because there's certain guys that travel for a reason because they can't work in their own local because they're, you know, there's every kind of person, you know, and whether it's female, male, like, but the female thing's a factor. But I've gone from that to it's not an issue for me at all. I don't think twice about it on any job I ever go on.
Okay.
You know, like. I don't walk in the door thinking about being a female and what are these guys going to do, but I've made that condition for myself with my reputation and with my work and with how, you know, and I'll stand up for anybody for the right thing. I'll lose my home for it. I've lost my jobs for somebody getting thrown under the bus, and I don't
You don't tolerate that.
No, I don't.
Good.
And I do fully believe in the brother and sisterhood of it, and that you know, you got to care about the people next to you. Even if you're working together a year and you get sick of each other, you're still your brother's keeper. It's a partner trade for a reason.
Yeah.
You don't send somebody in alone to an explosive area. You know, if they still have families. Whether you like them or not is incidental. You find a common ground, which is your job, and you know.
Right.
And if somebody's having a hard time, you help them out. You know, you give them a little support. You let them take a load off. You know, you let them cry on your shoulder, whatever it is. And so I end up being kind of very counselly to a lot of people, and a lot of people turn to me, but I'm okay with that. And I limit that, like, we have to do our job. But, you know, I do care about, and it's turned around where I've had people stand up for me. And I got fired 3 times last year. I've never been fired in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was humiliating, but it was guys that still have a problem with me. As soon as I ran the last piece of 36-inch, I had an ear infection and I missed a couple of days. And I had all these doctor's excuses except one day, but there was nothing else they could do. I ran the last piece of pipe in 3 PM, I'm fired.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it how businesses, I've seen that before. They'll make you do the last
part. The guy
part.
that was in charge has always had a problem with me. And I am a little rough around the edges, but that's how I roll. You know, and I mean, and I'm not a jackass or I'm not mean to people or, but I'm a pretty open person, and I'll talk about anything with anyone if it's appropriate or, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been able to get a lot of people to trust me and work alongside me where normally they've told me, like, if they work with a woman that is lazy and like just there for the check, then I work with them for a month and they're an ass, and I'm like, what is your problem?
Yeah.
Well, I worked with this girl for 3 months and she didn't do a effing thing, and I'm like, do you notice I'm not her, right? I'll work circles around you, I'll carry your bucket. You know, and older guys, I'm very respectful. I believe in rites of passage.
Yeah.
You know, and doing the right thing or taking care of someone if they're a little sick or their wife has passed and they're having a hard time at work.
Yeah.
You give them a task that's a little less stressful. You know, there's always something for everybody to do and be effective.
I mean, it sounds like an awesome job when you put it from that perspective.
I love it, but I like try to make the most out of it.
Yeah. Oh, and you
Like
certainly have after 24
years.
years.
Have only been just learning experiences and ways for me to be more secure. I didn't grow up a very secure person as much as I knew a lot of things. I didn't know one thing well, other than people, you know, and so getting in the trade, and at first I was like, I'm never going to be able to learn all this, and you know, I just felt dumb, but it was like, you never stop learning in the trade because everything is evolving all the time, and every lesson you learn, whether it's good or bad, you learn what to do or what not to do, but you can make your way, and like I just try to respect other women and myself and the people around me, and I try to teach younger girls that come in the trade to respect themselves. You know, like this one girl came on a job and she was going into Porta Johns and having everybody carry her tools.
Oh, dear.
And then she came to my job and said she knew how to do something and almost caused an accident. We were 100 feet in the air bringing a huge piece of pipe in, and she said she could signal it. And I said, you have to be able to say you don't know something and get your pride out of the way because somebody can get hurt or die. You know what I mean? Like literally. So I put her in her spot, and I put up rigging charts and signals all over the job. I'm like, and I tell people that every time I've gotten hurt, it's been because somebody had too much pride to say they didn't know how this was going to go or how this works. Right. So I'm humble as whoop.
Yeah, good. That makes sense.
I do love it though. I mean, it's very hard, and there's times it's harder than others, just depending on you know, depending on the group.
I can't even really put into words what you've just shared with me, because honestly, it's overwhelming what you've had to go through, what you've accomplished on your own. And just, you're superior. I'm not worthy.
That's hilarious. Well, and that's the thing, like I remember when I got in the trade, I was like, I love women. I love everybody, really. I'm a very that kind of person, but I didn't want to work with women because of the temperament. Yeah. Like all women, you know, and women hold grudges different.
We do.
And things like that. Like, but honestly, after all these years of working with guys, especially in a job environment, it's not that different. Okay. I mean, guys cry, bitch, piss, and moan. You know, they have their, we call it a mangina. You know, what's wrong with you, buddy? You know how guys will say that ignorant stuff. Oh, where did she get your parrot? Well, that's what Rosemary was talking about. I said, if you're in a bad mood at a job, or you go off on somebody, or you lose your temper a little bit, or you get upset or get frustrated, oh, she's a bitch. But if a guy does it, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that ain't what it's about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But that's a
but
normal.
I've stood up for that difference every time that I've had to deal with a problem or my own temperament with somebody pushing and pushing and pushing, you know. And, you
Right.
know.
Oh man.
But I try to be smart about it, and you have to be able to keep working with these same people. You go to so many jobs and you work with a different group, and then and people travel a lot, so it's,
Yeah.
I just don't believe in burning bridges, and
Yeah.
you know, I'll minimize. I had a guy that was bothering me my 5th year. I'm putting on a harness and doing all this measuring for these drawings, and he would come in drunk every morning. He was from another trade, and he was like, oh, I'm going to take you to the hotel, and you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like, I went out for my birthday, and we had, like, wings. I drank heavy and chain smoked, so I was, like, very congested. And he comes over, and he, like, grabs my chest or whatever, and I stomped on his foot, and I spit in his face. My boss and my steward wanted to do something, but I said, let me take care of it myself if I can't. Because they were very upset that he was behaving that way, and they wanted him removed. So I'm not going to cost anybody their job. I'm not going to have that be my reputation, and that's an example of that where I felt. So I dealt with it probably a little bit, but I spit in his face, and I was like, does that turn you on? You know, and I was like, so he
Wow.
actually stopped bothering me after that.
Oh, that's cool.
But it had been like building,
Wow.
you know, and I was like, I had told a couple guys about, oh, well, let us get him. And I'm like, but so a lot of times when a guy's gone over the top with me, I've dealt with it, but then I brought it up to somebody, and I document it in case I have to hit him or defend myself.
Right. That
you
was
know?
smart. I see.
And that's a very small percentage of guys. Honestly, you would
Okay.
think it was a lot worse than it is, but most guys at heart, if you're coming there and
Okay.
you do your job, they're going to respect you.
That
But
was
you
the
gotta-
majority
but you
of
gotta
the
respect
guys.
yourself also.
Yeah.
You know, there was a few
Okay.
times I was telling stories to a group of guys that I probably shouldn't have been, and it opened a window to somebody that was a little bit more of an inappropriate personality.
Oh, okay.
You got girls, you know, blah. you know,
Right.
that
I get
kinda-
what you're saying. Yeah.
But so you have to learn to respect yourself going
Yeah.
into the trade, and have a standard for the way someone talks to you. Like my friend Tara, if somebody, this guy came up to her 2 weeks ago and was like, "Hey," and he didn't mean anything by it, but she was like, "Oh," and she like plumbed him up. She was like, "You don't touch me, and you don't surprise me, and you don't put
Yeah.
your hands on me." Like, and,
Good.
and nobody does. And when, as she goes around the job, she got in like 13, 14 years later than me, and I see her already being stronger, but she had a lot of my stories to get her along the way, you know, and
Yeah.
so she has a good reputation, and she's not going through that. She's not experiencing that because people know she's not going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I would let things go because I'm like, well, I can't control anybody. And I just keep walking away, but it would keep going on. And so I had to learn to be a little more assertive and have
Okay.
more self-respect, but not being like flipping out and losing your grip. I was letting things go too far, and then I'm screaming and,
Yeah.
you know, having a face-off with somebody, and that's quite a scene, you know. So I
Yeah.
really don't. I try to, each time I go through something like that, I get a little better at how I deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, but I still
I do,
will be
yeah.
emotional about something when it's life and death, or, you know, like after that accident, I told them, they brought me right back like 2 days later, and I was blacking out, and I could barely walk around, and they're making fun of me, telling me I'm milking it, and I'm like, any of you guys would be home crying right now for this. I died for
Right.
7 minutes.
Right.
Got taken away in a hyperbaric chamber. You all went home yesterday.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
right.
And here I am, you know, so. But,
Unbelievable.
you know, it's been a hard road, but like at the same time, I had to learn some standards for myself as well. You know, and to be
think we all
cautious, not
do.
to put
Yeah.
myself in bad situations, because there's dark corners on jobs. You know, you could be with a guy for months, 6 months, and then all of a sudden you're in this little cubby hole with him, and all of a sudden he's a different person. Mm-hmm. You know, and you can't.
Right.
I had a guy attack me. He bashed my face in and busted my teeth out. We were neighbors, and I was renting from him. We were working on the AEP plant on the Ohio River.
Okay.
And I gave him a ride home. I got laid off all the travelers, so I was like, they did a cookout and a bar thing across the road for us. So he was drinking a lot. I said, please let me drive you home. His kids would play with my nephews. They rode dirt bikes, so I'd drive him home. And he said, so he was just being real negative, and I was like, dude, I don't want to hear it. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. I'm just trying to get you home to your kids. He reared back. You're going to listen to every fucking word I say. You hang out with all these guys when you should be around. I mean, and he just started punching me in my Tahoe. It was like a murder scene. I had like a piece of paper left in my cheek, and this got ripped open. I had like 27 stitches. But he, like, we were partners, and we never argued. We were neighbors for 3 years. I rented from him. You know, I knew his wife. And it was like as soon as I had a different partner at work or wasn't just relying on him, like he was just weird. And I never saw a sign of that. And the next thing I know, my face bashed, you know. Like,
do you think it was mostly just the alcohol, though, that
with him,
stirred that up?
But also he didn't like that I was open about being gay. He didn't like how friendly and how much I got along with so many guys in his local.
I see.
Like he thought as a female that I should shut my mouth. Like that's what he was screaming at me. He's like, you need to learn to shut your fucking mouth and all this stuff. And I'm like,
I see.
I'm not your wife.
Yeah.
And I said, and you better not talk to her like that either.
Right. That's
honestly,
right.
it was wild. It went
Wow,
on for
what
a
an
couple
experience
hours.
that you've gone through.
But
you have
his
two older...
thing was me being a stronger female personality that eventually got him crazed towards me.
Yeah, just
Which
kind of
was
flip
like,
the switch.
I was like, oh, I wouldn't have rented off you all this time if I knew you were trying to put me down, you know. But it was very unexpected. But it was like, you know, it was kind of. And then a couple of guys that I was partners with, like the one guy said, I kept noticing him looking at you kind of weird the last few weeks. And I'm like, I didn't notice. I was busy doing my job, you know. Yeah. But, I mean, alcohol was definitely a proponent. But
that didn't help.
He had something brewing in there for a while when it came out.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
You know, but I handled it.
Yeah. You know, you used the word earlier about the job evolving, but I just think culturally we are evolving also, as well.
Yeah, and
God. It's just a matter maybe that he just needed to, you know, hopefully he's adjusting better now.
He ended up leaving the local.
Did he?
A couple guys kind of went after him, and I didn't want him to do that. I'm like, I said, I just want to be done with it.
Yeah.
I don't go back, you know.
No, don't do that.
So it's like, I went back to that job a year later, and I kept seeing him around town, and I'm like, you need to quit crossing my path because I will put you down. I mean, like I've been through a lot of things. I've been mug over 30 times in my life, and you know, and I've been blessed to be calm and be able to handle physically being attacked, even though I'm not that strong. Or I've had guys twice my size, and I've taken a gun off of them, and they're like, "How did you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, you're out of hand, and I'm not." But same thing on a job when a guy gets out of hand.
Yeah.
You know, there's just guys that don't like women in general, or maybe they have a bad marriage and they want to take it out on you, but you can't let them. You know, you have to like be stronger in moments than you ever thought you would be. Or, I would be looking at women being like, well, I don't want to be represented that way. I don't want to be this, or I don't want to be a bitch, or I don't want to be. It is what it is. Deal with the situation as it comes, you know. Right. Call it what it is, you know what I mean? So it's. I try to be a little less rough through the years, you know, because I could be a little abrasive about those things with some people, but you know, they're real things to deal with, and some jobs it's incessant, you know, but I don't worry about it anymore. It's not a source of stress for me anymore at all.
Good.
I go to a job. I mean, I'm nervous like the first day of school, every new job, because you change so many and you don't know who you're going to run into. Some favorites, some not.
Yeah.
You know, and you actually see some guys evolving too, where there's some guys that were just horrible people to me when I was an apprentice, and the next few years, and now they're like, oh, like we're the greatest thing since peas and carrots, you know, like so.
You know,
but I've
done
been
that.
able to through the years win somebody over and get them to change their thinking, and I'm not that girl that you worked with that wouldn't do her job. So at least for me personally, I can walk around and know that I'm representing myself truly, and that I'm representing the trade truly, and that I'm a pipe fitter, and that I do my job, and. You know, like, so it has nothing to do with me being it. People keep bringing it up through the years and like, well, you're a female, la la la, and I'm like, I'm a pipe fitter. Yeah, I'm a female and I love being one, but I don't go to my jobs thinking about being a female, at all. But a lot of women do.
Well, you know what though? It actually something just came to my mind. Do you think, even as a young person, second grader, mowing the lawn, was there any part of you where you felt like you had to prove yourself?
I did all the time.
And is that part of the reason why you are a hard worker?
Probably. you know, because it was like I was around. Well, like when I was little, I remember Christmas time we'd go to my grandma's next door, and all the girls had to do the dishes while all the guys sat around with their hands in their pants.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know. And
I mean, literally, their hands in their
My dad
pants.
was a hard worker, and he didn't, you know, he didn't come home and not do nothing. He was always fixing something. He was always trying to get something for us. You know, he coached baseball, basketball.
Okay.
He would give kids that didn't have a dad a ride. You know, he was very hard on us. And like, I didn't get to make the team, and I thought, oh, my dad's the coach, I'm gonna be on the team. Nope. And I was devastated. But then I realized I wasn't gonna have anything handed to me. And we grew up very poor. And I remember this family. While we were at church one day, this family that lived up the road, they would give us work and pay us. My mom would clean for them and different things. They had kind of a mansion on the hill.
Oh, okay.
But they were real into it. So they came over, and my dad had got laid off, and we didn't have any groceries, and like the power was off. We still had an outhouse. And they came in and put in a Christmas tree and filled the house with gifts and food.
Gosh. Yeah.
And so in the trade, one of the things about the money we make and the brotherhood side of that, you know, during the holidays and stuff, we'll take up collections. Me and a bunch of guys, when I was in Lima, this lady lost her husband. She had 3 little ones. The landlord locked her out of all her things, couldn't get her kids clothes, nothing. And she worked in the local area where we would eat every day after work by our hotel.
Yeah.
So I started finding out more about it. So we took up a collection. We rented a house, paid the rent for 2 years, put a new furnace in it, bought beds and clothes. And there was hundreds of guys on that job, so we did raffles, and we didn't tell her about it. I got keys, and so by Christmas time we had her, and I was bringing home $3,000 a week. I was working 7 14s.
Wow.
You know, which 14s you don't always work that many hours, but some even 18s, because we were doing a lot of fresh air work, and you have to stay with it.
Okay.
So, but during that time, you know, I wanted to give back and remember.
Exactly.
That, and even when guys are having a hard time, or say somebody goes through a divorce, they have a bad spell, they drink a little bit, they come back to work and they're struggling to get gas in their car. I help them out.
Good.
You know, but I don't give to takers. Took me
Right.
a long time to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good guys, and there's a lot of the tides are changing for sure.
Good.
But there's still that old school hate. Out there. There's
That's
guys
what's
that
so
don't want
interesting.
a woman telling them what to do just because it's a woman.
And that's what we kind of, part of this is to hear something like how you would think it by now it should be completely changed, but there isn't. There's still some of those biases.
Very old school.
Yeah.
Well, and there's still a ton of, after Trump being in office, it was like a revival of racism and of hate.
Yeah.
And gender hate, race hate.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like almost like teaching all these people with the worst qualities to be proud of those qualities. Like, I think that's very unfortunate.
Yes, I agree.
You know, but there's a lot of people that don't, just like I said, if somebody is being racist or talking shit about a girl or whatever it is, I don't tolerate it. And I'm not going to sit there and rat somebody out, but they're not going to speak that way around me at all. And if I'm around and they're treating someone bad, it's going to stop immediately.
Okay.
But you have to be able to stand up for other people and yourself, no matter what's the consequence is. You know, you have to be willing to, like, you know, you take a short hit by maybe standing up for someone, but in the long run, you're doing the right thing, and it's going to iron out. You just can't look at it as, in that moment, being so devastating or being, you know, I've lost my job a lot of times for that reason.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, listen, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up then, because you have shared immensely a lot of information, a lot of great experiences, and it's just very eye-opening for me. I mean, and but even
It's
some
nice
things
to be
where
able
it's
to
like
be honest about
I'm
it, too.
connecting with you as well. Like you have said things, and I'm like, yes, I know what she's talking about, and that's what's important as well. And hearing some of this new stuff, the challenges you've went through. Fantastic. Well, not fantastic, but just the sharing part is fantastic.
I feel good about all of it. I don't have any regrets. You know what I mean? I don't.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.